Today, I'm going to show you how to build custom ASL boards using Photoshop, Photoshop Elements, or GIMP, and how to create the board file to be imported into Vassal. I'll provide you with all files, brushes, colors, and textures, so let's get started. Okay guys, today we're going to talk about ASL map making, and I'm going to show you the way I have recently learned how to do it using Photoshop, and I'm going to talk about how to create the file for Vassal, how to import it into Vassal, all the textures and brushes that you will need, and I'll actually provide those for you in the description below when this video is posted. So let's get to it. Here we are I use Photoshop Elements. Oh, and I'm also centered in this video because I'm going to have to use some information over here to my left that would normally be hidden by my big mug and shoulders, so I move myself to the center. But I use Photoshop Elements for a couple reasons. One, Photoshop Elements or full Photoshop is very expensive to buy and use legally. Photoshop Elements is much more reasonable. I think I got it for $69, and it does everything basically a non-professional graphic designer would need to do with Photoshop. And it's much easier to use. It has all the major bells and whistles you would need to do, most of the things that a normal person would need to do. This method, I believe, will also work with GIMP, which is a open source Photoshop clone. I don't remember what GIMP stands for. It's an acronym for something about graphics, something. I've fiddled with GIMP, but I'm so familiar with Photoshop. I've been using Photoshop for a couple decades now. I am by no means an expert, but I know just enough to get the things done that I need to do. HexDraw. HexDraw is an option. I have fiddled with HexDraw, and I find the look of it, unless you work some sort of magic with the textures, the output looks a little too generic, less organic than I can get with using Photoshop and the textures that I've been able to create myself or wrangle up. And I'll talk about that in a minute. That was a whole nother problem. But HexDraw is another option. You have to pay for it. One, you have to pay for it. I didn't want to pay for another piece of software because I own Photoshop Elements. You have to find the texture libraries somewhere, share someone to share that shares it, or download it from somewhere. And again, I think the extra output looks a little too generic and sanitary than what I can get with what I've created here with Photoshop. But I've seen some maps with HexDraw that look pretty good, so that's obviously an option. But I'm not going to talk about HexDraw here. I fiddled with it. I am by no means an expert, so I didn't want to show you how to use it because I don't really know too much about using HexDraw. Someone else could probably make a better video on how to use HexDraw to create ASL maps. The other thing about this is these maps that I'm going to show you how to create are not super high resolution, print quality, marketable, to sell. These maps are meant to be playtest maps that you can create to be used in Vassal. And then once your creative process is done, where you've created a map, created a scenario or group of scenarios that uses, a geomorphic map or custom board, then you go into the actual printing process for, your scenario cards and your map. You would have to recreate the map in a much higher resolution print quality, which if you have the Vassal base map that I'm going to show you how to do here, would actually be really easy to do. I just have not been able to wrangle up the high resolution textures, high resolution hex grid, and that sort of thing to be able to create a much higher, bigger size and higher print quality maps. But in a pinch, you can use this method to create Vassal maps, ASL Vassal maps very quickly. At this point, I'm able to create a geomorphic ASL board, at least a rough concept of one, in an afternoon. Basically, one board an afternoon if I needed to do it. Okay. So let's see. let me explain a little bit about how Photoshop works for those who don't know. Photoshop is a graphic design program, and it uses what's called a layering system to create images. I mean, most people are probably used to an image just being an image. They think of an image like a photograph they hold in their hand. It has one layer. You look at it, and that's the photo. In Photoshop, it's built up similar to old school animation process where you've got clear layers on top of each other that have different elements to it. And the higher you are in the stack in the layer are the things that you see first, and the deeper you are in the different layers are the things you see behind. So over here on the right, over here, this is sort of the base generic starting map. It's got the green level 0. It's got, the road locations where they start. This is sort of the base starting point. You can see here all of these. You can see level 0 is here at the bottom. That's the bottom layer. Everything else on an ASL map is going to be on top of level 0. Can be pasted up on top of it. Roads, woods, buildings, orchards, hedges, what have you. And then the layers go up from there. There's level 1, 2, 3, and the order of the layers here kind of depends on the terrain. In other words, woods is generally going to be on top of the different levels because you could have woods on a level 2. So woods are going to be higher than the level layers, etc. So the order of these are pretty close to where they would be if you were actually building up a board. But if you want to move a layer in Photoshop and probably GIMP, you can just grab it and drag it and move the layer higher or lower. Pretty simple. Um, First, I'm going to show you just the base map, starting map, which I already showed you, I guess. And now I'm going to jump to a finished map for a project we're working on. It's just a European theater themed map. Right now it's called ETO2. Okay, here's an ETO finished map, at least, version 1. It could be tweaked, obviously, but here's what it looks like today. And you can see all the features here. Let me zoom out just a little bit. We've got grain, roads, some hills, woods, buildings, hedges. We have a little pond slash lake here, and wood and stone buildings, and some brush, a little brush up here, and a path. Now, let me show you how the layers work. Let's say I want to turn off all the roads. So you come down to the roads layer, and here's where roads is, and you just hit the eyeball button, and let me zoom in a little, and all the roads go away. Roads on, off. And this is the way GIMP works as well, which is the free version of Photoshop. Let's turn off, let's see all the buildings. Buildings right here. There's all the buildings. Let's turn off all the grain. There's all the grain, etc. So when you build up an ASL image, an ASL map image within Photoshop, you want to make sure you put the terrain features on the correct layer to be able to turn stuff on and off very easily. That way you can do things like create maps with, say, plowed fields. So right here I'm showing grain, but if I wanted to have a plowed fields version, I just turn off the grain layer and turn on the plowed fields version. Boom, got plowed fields. If I wanted to turn on the winter version, a winterized version, boom, winterized version. I just turned on level 0 snow level here. Okay, so make sure when you create these terrain features, you put them on separate layers built up from ground zero through your software, whether it's Photoshop or GIMP, to be able to turn stuff on and off and easily erase something. So if I wanted to erase a road and I actually drew it over on the same level and over a hill, it would be very hard to erase because it would be the road color would be mixed in with the hill color on the same layer. But if I had a road going over a hill, and it's on a different layer, I just pick the roads layer, and I can pick the erase tool and come in here, and I can just erase a road, and it'll only erase the road. It won't erase any other terrain just because you're on the road layer. Let me undo that. Um, so that's it for layers. Okay. Now you may be wondering, okay, how do I do this? Okay, there are three things you need, three tools within Photoshop that you need to be able to do all this stuff. One is the color palette. And here is the majority of the ASL color palette. I've created a color palette file for Photoshop. I, I'm unsure if this can be imported into GIMP. I believe it can read Photoshop palette files. Someone, if you're an expert in GIMP, post below if that can be done. I believe you can. So these are all the official Vassal colors for the various terrain features, such as all the level colors, dirt road color, paved road color, hedges color, what have you. So first thing you need is the right colors. Okay. Second thing you need are the right textures. And I've created a texture library that has ASL texture patterns. I've got brush, cactus, graveyard, marsh, marsh 2, orchard, olive groves, rice paddies, paths, plowed field 0 degree, plowed field 90 degree, rail bed, scrub, walls, 2 wall textures, woods, light woods transparent, and then a test. I forget what test is. Must have been testing. And then the third thing you need is brushes to create these things. Let's see if we go to the brushes, and I've created cliffs, hedges, paths, mule track, which is for another project I was working on, normal roads, access roads, which are thin roads like this right here, woods and brush, uh, dry stream light, dry stream dark, and then various orchard patterns and different rotations, and whether it's a orchard and a road, or if a road goes through the orchard or not. And I'll show you how to use all of this here in a moment. So those are the three things you need: the full color palette, textures to fill in, like to fill in a woods, and the correct brush to create some of these features. Oh, and the other thing you will need is building files. I have an example of that. I have an example of that when I open it. I thought I opened it right. Here's one. Let's open two. Let's open wood building. Okay, so here's some wood buildings you can use and some stone buildings you can use. And what you can do is you can just cut and paste these buildings from these files onto your ASL board. They're scaled correctly so they'll fit on here. And basically these are all building files. I have several other building files: 1 hex stone wood, 2 hex stone wood, and 3 plus stone and wood buildings. And you can just cut these out and slap them on your map and rotate them to give you some orientation depending on what your map looks like. And then I also have some files for things like out of season orchards and things like that. And again, I'm going to try to put together a package, maybe a zip package, and I'll link again in the descriptions below. Now, one word about this learning process. Maybe 6 months ago, I knew absolutely nothing about map design. I mean, I know how to do graphic design, but I didn't know, how do I start? What's the right size? Where do I get the hex grid? How do I turn it into a Vassal file to import into Vassal? Where do I get the textures? Where do I get the buildings? And I asked in various places, and I got to admit, I mean, I love the ASL community, but trying to get some of this information from people was like pulling teeth. It was incredibly frustrating. I thought people would be better at sharing how they, design the maps they do, because we all see cool maps being designed. And I got a little bit of help, but not way less than I expected. So I just had to figure it out myself. So I tracked down all of these textures, all the building files. I found them somewhere. I created the brushes to do this, but I'm going to share it all with you because that's the way the community should be. I'm going to share everything I've learned. Hopefully, some of you guys can use this to quickly create um, vassal maps to do playtesting for any creative projects you want to do in ASL. And I'll try to answer any questions in the comments below if I can, or on the various other community sites where I hang out. You guys mostly know who I am on the various sites. All right, let's do a little creating now using the starting geoboard. Now, the first thing you want to do, let me see. Now, let's go back to this map that I created. Now, if you don't have, now let me open a different one. Let's open this one in addition, this map here. Let me shrink this up just to get a little more room. Now, if you don't know where to start when you're creating a new map for ASL to be used in Vassal and to be used in a printed project later, you can always scour the internet for World War II area photographs of Europe or even the South Pacific, and Okinawa, India, Burma. If you can find stuff like that, if you need an idea on where to start, that's a good thing to do if you have no idea what to do. So in this example, it's loosely based on this photograph. So all you have to do is find an aerial photo somewhere. Like this one represents a village in France. It's got some roads, it's got some hedges you can see, there are some orchards underneath there. And I just use that as a starting point to get an idea of, how roads flow in Europe, where grain and hedges and hedgerows would be. And you can just start building from there, and you can just paint over that, and you just put that in a bottom layer and just start painting over the top of some representative terrain from the 1940s in Europe or whatever theater you're looking at. And you can just turn it on and off, as you need, as you draw over it, just to give you a flavor and give you a starting point of what something like that might look like. Okay, so I wanted to show you that you can embed photos in there and start painting over them to give you ideas. Let's close that and just go back to our starting point here. Now I'm just going to I'm going to use some brushes and some colors and just start doing some things. So let's just draw some roads. So the first thing you want to do is find the roads layer. In this case, it's called dirt roads. There's also a paved road. And you want to make sure you pick the road color. So you come down to your color palette, ASL colors, and pick dirt road. You want to pick your brush, and you want to come to brushes, and you pick roads normal. Okay. And let's start drawing this from here in Y10 where some roads coming in. Now in Photoshop Elements, you can hold down Shift to draw a continuation of the paintbrush you're using. So you can draw curves and continuation of a line. So let's just zoom in a little bit, and I'll just click here, and then you hold Shift down, and you can just start painting a road like this. Can have a road. Then you lift off the Shift, click here once, hold Shift down, and just bring the road down like this. Get some little curves and characters to it. Now, if you want to do a paved road, click over on the paved layer, click the paved color, and continue with the paved road. This isn't going to make sense, but I'm going to do it anyway. And the paved layer is underneath the dirt layer, so you can go under it to kind of do a continuation. Okay. Then hold Shift down, start drawing. Now GIMP, I don't know if it has a shift feature to allow you to draw like this, but just like that, I've drawn a bunch of roads in like a minute or so. Okay, just like that. Boom. Let's do, and there's no texture involved with roads. It's just two colors, paved, dirt and paved. Okay. Now, if you don't like, I have sort of this edging on here, this dark edging. If you don't like that, in Photoshop, you can come over here to the layer, double click on the layer effects, this FX here, double click, and it's the stroke feature. Just turn stroke off, on and off to get rid of that. Just hit OK if you want it off. Okay. Let's draw some woods. Now woods involves, it has texture. So we want to, but we still want to start with the woods color to start drawing on. Make sure we go to the woods layer, click on brush again, click on the brush here. And the brush in GIMP might be in a different location. In full Photoshop, if you have it, it might be in a slightly different location than Photoshop elements. And then pick woods and brush. Now this is sort of a splotchy type of brush that gives the woods their shape, that they're kind of blotchy, big blotches of woods or brush. This also works for brush. Let's just start drawing some woods. So I got the color, I got the brush. I'm on the right layer, the woods layer. Let's just come up here and start drawing some woods. You don't have to hold shift down, just start painting like this. Maybe there's a gap there. Come up here. Okay, now that we've got kind of a woods blob painted, we want to fill that with the woods texture. So we go to the fill tool here, which is a paint bucket. You click that. Make sure you're on pattern, not color, not paint. You want to be on pattern. And then pick the drop down and click the woods pattern. And then just click inside here anywhere. And we've just created a woods. If I wasn't instructing you, that would have probably taken 5 seconds to create, just like that. All right, let's do some grain. So now you can turn that layer on and off. Right? If you want to erase it, let's move it. I'll show you as an example. Let's move it, put it on top of there. Let's say we wanted to erase some of it. Because it's on its own layer, as we erase it, it doesn't erase the road. It's on its own layer. Okay. Let's put it back where it was. Control Z that, and let's make some grain. There's the grain layer. Grain doesn't involve texture, it's just the color. Make sure we pick the grain texture, sorry, the grain color. Up here, we're on the grain layer. Go to brush. Grain, grain is pretty much like woods, but not as blotchy. I just use the Rhodes brush with its 13. You can use any smooth brush. And the way I do it is I just go center dot to center dot to start. I go from there, hold shift down, just paint like this, close it up, come over to fill, then pick paint because we're not doing a pattern, we're just doing a color. And the current color is the brush color, and we just fill that. And then go back to the brush and we can start smoothing it out, making it look like grain. Boom, grain field, just like that. Done. Now say we wanted to create plowed fields of that, an alternate version. So let's duplicate that layer and create a plowed field. We already have a plowed fields here, so we'll just ignore that for now. Let's just duplicate this layer. Let's right click it and go duplicate layer. I'll call it plowed fields. Okay. Let's put it below. Let's turn off the grain layer. You're going to see it even though I turn it off because we're seeing the copy of it, which is underneath it. Then we go to fill, we go to pattern, and we pick, let's pick plowed fields 90, and you just click in here. Boom, you got plowed fields. Now, if you don't want that yellow outline in plowed fields, just come over to the FX, turn off stroke, layer effects, and boom, you have a plowed field just like that. Regular grain, plowed field. Now, what do you do with buildings? So here are the 2 hex wood buildings, and we want to put one in. These are all, this is the board they came off of. This file may be old as well because it only goes up to board 63, and I think ASL's up to almost board 100 by now. I don't remember where I got these files, but I'm going to provide them to you. I don't know if they've been updated. I don't even know how old they are, but it works good for these Vassal ASL board designs. So let's just say we want this building here. Make a copy of this building. You need to select it, and you can select it typically by, you can do this a square if the building is isolated by itself. Let's say we want one of these buildings. I can't use a square because I can't select it. I'll get the other building as well because they're all in the same layer. What I want to do is get this lasso tool and just draw around it. Oop, try again. Draw around it like this, and then just go to your select tool and grab it and drag it over to the map you're working on. Which one were we working on? This one, yeah. And drop it in. It's going to put it on its own layer, and you can, where's the building layer at? I think it's down below. Buildings right there. And you can rename it later, but then you can just position it. Let's just put it down here. And we've got a building. Let's copy this layer style. I think it puts a little shadow around it. Copy style, paste. Yeah, it puts a little shadow around it. This is a normal building layer, but you can put it in there later. So that's how you do a building. Let's see. How about hedges? Let's do a hedge. Let's do a hedge around this building. Pick the hedge color, pick the hedges layer, go to your brush, pick the hedges brush, and then just draw along the hex spine using the shift. So click and then shift click to here, shift click, shift click, shift click, just like that. Now what you want to do to fill this hedge out is you want to fill it with the hedge color again. So go to fill, not on pattern, fill it with the color, and just click in there, and boom, you got a hedge. Let's do a wall next. Let's go to the walls, pick the wall color. I think it's at the bottom. Maybe not. Maybe I didn't do these alphabetically. That is bizarre. I do not have a wall color in here. Oh well, we're gonna fill it with the texture anyway. So let's go, just pick road, paved. Go to your brush. You should already be on hedges. Use the hedges or cliffs, not cliffs. Use hedges. Hedges and walls. I should name that hedges and walls. And let's just put a wall in front here. Click, click, shift click, shift click. Now this time we want to fill it with a pattern. So click to the pattern fill, come over here and click on the texture. Let's do, I think walls is a new texture I'm using. Yeah, let me undo that. We can look at walls old. I think that's the official Vassal wall texture. I actually prefer walls new. Doesn't matter. Pick whatever you like. Okay, now that's on the walls layer. Hedges are on the hedges layer, etc. Now, how about orchards? Let's explore some of the other brushes. So let's click on the orchard layer, go to brushes and click on, let's just do orchard square. Okay. Now there are different shapes. These are square, but the little blobs are a little bit different shape. For a Vassal board, for scenario design and playtest, it's probably not too important. I'm just going to pick square too, but you can fiddle around with these and start to slapping down some orchards. Orchard. Oops. Make sure you switch to the orchard color. Orchard color. Not olive orchard. That's a special different type. I'll show you how to do that in a second. Maybe I'll do an orchard and a regular orchard. So here's an orchard, a couple orchards. It's kind of like a stamp tool. You just stamp it down. Let's do a olive orchard over here. Okay, now we want to fill in the regular orchards. That's just going to be a color, the orchard color. Let's just fill those in. I probably should have put the olive orchards on a different layer in case you wanted to control those. But right now, all the orchards are on one layer. Just fill those little blobs in, makes it a little more distinct. Now for the olive orchard, I created a separate little texture. So go back to fill, click on texture, and go to orchard olive, and just start filling those in. So this is a graphic for olive orchards. Okay. Now if you wanted to do orchards at an angle, let's see, you could do like 45 degree. This is kind of 45, like that. If you wanted to do 135 degrees, it's kind of the other direction. So there's different angles and different configurations for the orchard brushes. Let's see, what other brushes do we have here? Streams, woods, paths, cliffs. Cliffs is kind of a broad. Let's do a hill. Let's go to level 1. Pick the level 1 graphic. Go to paint. Hills can be basically do the same as grain. Let me turn grain back on Plow Fields. You can use the same brush, same process as basically doing a grain field. Just rough out the hill like this, and then just start however you like to make your hills look, contour wise, basic hill like that. And then fill in the center with the current color, fill it in. You might get, because of some edging, you might have to come back and paint over this to get it filled in totally. And then if you want to do a cliff, make sure you're on the cliff layer. Always put every terrain feature on the appropriate layer. Cliff layer, cliff color, cliff brush. And typically a cliff is, well, let me try to draw it here. That's not a good, but it'll suffice. And then fill it in with the cliff color like that. You got a cliff, okay? Yeah, so just in, I don't know how long did that take? 20 minutes? I mean, I'm just spitballing, but it's pretty quick to build up terrain features using Photoshop elements, the color palette, the brush, and the textures that are in this, and that you'll be able to import into Photoshop and or GIMP if you choose to do that. So everything is on its own layer. Yeah, that's the gist of it. I don't want to spend an inordinate amount of time, hours, showing you how to do this. A lot of it is trial and error and kind of learning your best method of how to draw the features you want to do. You can also use the brushes to erase things. Let me show you that. So click on the erase tool, make sure it's selected on brush, woods brush. If I want to come in here and refine this a little bit, give it more character. Make sure you're on the woods. So right now I'm on the cliffs layer, and the only thing on the cliffs layer is this. So I'm erasing nothing here. Got to make sure we're on the woods layer. Where did I put the woods layer? There's a lot of layers here. Woods, right there. Click to the woods layer. Now, if you want to add more character to woods, you can, switch to this blobby brush and just start, adding a little character. You can do the same to grain. Add a little character. Yeah, you can do all kinds of things with Photoshop and different brushes and giving your maps a little bit of character. Now let me show you a map for another project that I worked on a while ago. Project is currently kind of stalled. It is a map of, here it is. Hill 424 in Sicily, uh, Altavia, Italy. Has to do with Operation Husky, 82nd Airborne, and Hermann Goring Division fighting over this hill, which basically overlooks the beaches at Gela. Um, this is this was completely done in Photoshop Elements. Lots of layers in this one, but this shows you even with a simple $60 piece of software, which I believe I got on sale, maybe it's $100 normally, you can do some really powerful things with this. Again, if I had all the really high resolution textures, high resolution grids, hex grids, I could do a print quality. You can print these. I've printed out these maps just on my printer, and they're good enough to play on. But if you were ever going to sell this and get them printed on cardstock, you would certainly want to use higher resolution. But this method will do in a pinch, and at least give a baseline for uh, if you're actually going to design an ASL product to be printed by either a third MMP or a third party. It gives them a baseline to easily take your map and put it into a high resolution version, probably fairly quickly using this method. But let's hop back to this map here. This is just to show you the level of detail that you can do with using this method, right? I mean, look at all these layers here. Here's all the hills. Turn all the hills on and off. But woods, I could turn all the woods off. I've got the woods grouped, so I've got woods, light woods, and I think transparent woods. So I can turn all the woods off very easily. So yeah, very cool. Now let me show you how to take a map and import it into Vassal. Let's just say we're done with this map. It's version 1. We're going to do some play testing on it. It's kind of a crappy map, but that's okay. So you have to export it as a GIF file. Maybe not. Maybe Vassal can read. I have not verified that. Maybe it can read JPEG and PNG, but I always export it as a GIF file because that's the map. That's the graphic format that's in all the Vassal files. So just go File, Save As, and just pick GIF, and let's just call it board BD test. Okay. Let's see, BD test. There it is, right there. There's the board we just created. That's the GIF file. Now you need a board file for Vassal. So I have one here. I'm just going to copy it. And I think you can name it anything, but typically you give it the same name as the file that it contains. So we're going to call it BD test. And these Vassal files, all they are zip files without the zip extension. So just right click it and go open archive open with whatever zip program you use. It opened it in another window. And you can see here, this was the ETO2 board that I just had and a data file. The data file I think it just says version 1. So when you're making a geo file, it's very easy to do. All you need is, I believe, this data file, which just says version 1, and the board image. So let's grab board test and just drag it in and dump it in there. Yes, to add it, let's delete this. Okay, so all we have in there is the new graphic file we created and the data file. Now, if you are making a geo board and you want all the line of sight information on it, that's much more complicated. I don't know the exact method to do that. Or if you're creating a custom size Vassal map, like the Altavia one I showed you, you have to put extra info in an XML file that tells Vassal, the number of hexes, X and Y, the distance in pixels between hex centers and things like that. so the line of sight line lines up with things correctly. But if you're just making a straight geoboard from this initial template, all you need to do is dump the GIF file into this file and have this data file that says version 1. And it always works. You won't have detailed line of sight information such as whether it's a hindrance or blocked. Line of sight string will still work, but you won't get all the line of sight information. Okay, just close that and then copy it. Sorry, copy the Vassal file. Copy it. Go to wherever you store Vassal and go to the boards directory and paste it in there. And we called it test. And let's fire up Vassal. See if it'll work. Start a new game. Okay, board test. Test right there. That looks like our board. Hit finish. There you go. Boom. Crappy board, but that's how easy it is to import a standard format size geoboard into Vassal. And just check line of sight. Yep, line of sight works. If we go through the grain, you can see it doesn't mark it as a hindrance, nor does it mark it as an obstacle. But center to center and vertice to vertice type line of sight will work. You just will not get the indicator of whether it is a hindrance or a line of sight obstacle. All right, that is it. This is basic ASL map making for Vassal, at least as a springboard to get you to high resolution, fully printed version if your project makes it that far. But if you want to start doing some creative work within ASL and within Vassal and doing playtesting, this is how you do it. Very easy to do. Again, I will either make a zip file or a link to a directory that contains the palette, the brushes, the textures, all the building files and other files that you can open to move stuff onto your map and onto the different layers up here, as well as the starting geo file, kind of the blank one with all these layers in it. I will create links below in the description so you can download those, and you can either get to work and playing around with them on Photoshop Elements, full Photoshop, if you can afford it and have it, or GIMP, which is the open source Photoshop clone that's available for download for free. If you want to do stuff in HexDraw, I cannot help you with that. There are other people that are really good at that. I've put all my focus into using Photoshop to do my map designs. All right. I hope this helps. I've been meaning to do this video for quite a while. And if you have any questions, post them below. I appreciate it, and I'll see you next time.
Get to the chopper!
If you like what you saw, please like, share, and subscribe. If you didn't like what you saw, thanks for watching, and let me know how I can do better. See you in the next video.